so forth. It's like my ever-present past sometimes. So it's hard to recall a lot of stuff, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I was also wondering if when you were, I'm assuming that when you started kindergarten, you were not all the way through school, but at some point starting out, you had an aide with you at school as well?
Yeah.
Do you know how old you were when you stopped having the aide at school?
It's kind of hard to say, but because it did get to a point where I actually had a conversation with my former therapist, and I actually was straight up and saying, I'm not really feeling too comfortable here, because maybe, I know you mean well, but this is really making me stand out. And it's like, you want to fit in because something's up when your classmates are kind of looking at you what is up with Nick, And you just, especially at an age where you're young and you want to fit in, it just is awkward. But I can tell you, while, it got to a point where he stopped directly interacting with me, it was for a while, up until I finished therapy, that there were some who just came in to observe, but without me without me having to know that, which made it a little easier.
And did you know, or?
Actually, I did. I ran into one of them last summer, and I was just like, "Now you must remember." He's like, "Oh, some things aren't within my ability to control you." I memorized one of them. Yeah.
Because we wonder that a lot, where we have, actually this is a topic we did recently at our last staff training. We talked about working in schools and what we call school shadowing. And I don't know if you ever had what we call an unknown shadow, where during the process of when we're trying to fade out, we have someone start going to school with our clients, and we don't want the client to know that that person is there for them. And we often wonder, is the kid onto us? We're really trying to be subtle, and do they really know?
Yeah.
I know.
Pretend they don't. I have a question. So do you have a lot of early memories of the early parts of ABA, and also, I guess it's two questions. The other one is, do you recall conversations that people had around you and how that made you feel when you were younger? Did they talk about your therapy in front of you? I think.
Mostly what I remember is the difficulty and sometimes being yelled at because I wasn't doing something right.
Yelled at by the therapist?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think things have changed a little even since then, because I was doing therapy. Nick is actually about the same age, we talked about this before, as my first client that I worked with. And therapy softened over the years. More hardcore than it is now. Yeah, there's really no yelling.
I'll tell you this. I don't remember which therapist it was, but I do clearly recall one who always threatened if I refused to comply, putting Tabasco sauce on the table.
Oh my God.
I kid you not. I kid you not.
We don't do that anymore.
I'm glad Dr. Lovas came to his senses. Because I have a lot of respect for the man for his revolutionizing this behavior treatment, but I didn't like how he approved of this sort of thing early on. And because certain people, such as the founder of the organization where I got help, studied under him, this carried on for some time. But thankfully, I'm just glad there isn't any of that.
Did you, I don't know if, were you guys all aware of that in the early work done in ABA, the first studies that were published regarding intensive ABA by Lovas at UCLA, they used aversives, meaning mostly what they talked about in the published study was slaps on the leg for problem behaviors or non-compliance. But there were a lot of procedures that were also aversive, like, I don't know, Nick, if when you were taught to discriminate between yes and no, if this was the procedure used, but I was trained to use this procedure when I first taught yes and no. You'd ask, when you were teaching a child yes, no desires, and you got to teaching no, so do you want, and you want the child to say no, we purposefully used something like Tabasco or mustard, and if they said yes accidentally, we were to give it to them, because it was like, well, that's how you learn, is, if you say yes, yes, I want mustard, and you're forced to eat mustard, you're going to learn to say no. So there were a lot more aversive procedures back in the day, but like Nick said, over the years that, we all came, to realize that that wasn't necessary, and it's no longer recommended best practice, and it's not done anymore, but, yeah. So even just, you're just in your early 20s, right? But things have changed a lot. I've been doing this, I've been in this field for, I guess, 16 years now, and things have changed a lot.
Yeah, my mom also regrets times that she spanked me out of frustration. Because, being a parent in that situation, it's tough, but you've got to be careful. Just as good as if you were a therapist. So
you don't remember as much. You don't necessarily, we wonder about, I think Kat's question was, if you remember people ever talking about it around you, especially for our kids that are, our more advanced learners that are really starting to have a lot of language. That's something we worry or wonder about.
I can't remember that much, but I never really had to be told that I was, considering how long I went through this. It just got to a point where I started coming to my senses and more aware of what was going on. Whereas many kids these days to end early without ever knowing that they went through this until their parents decided to reveal it to them. And nobody ever had to do that for me. I knew.
Just from the, over time you just sort of figured it out. And
it clicked and it changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, forward now.
Well, I know for some of our kids that have had therapy for a long time, they learn to read. You learn to read the word autism. You see the word autism, you see it, you start asking maybe, over time, like, what is that? What does that mean? Does that refer to me? So, yeah. I was wondering if, you said when you were a kid you had some self-stimulatory behavior, and now I'm just wondering, like, on your own, if you feel any remnants of that.
Not really, but I may not be a behavior analyst. But I've gotten to a point where it's like I can kind of tell if somebody is based on the science or the symptoms. Especially having a younger cousin who's battling autism. And I will tell you, it really took me coming to terms with my own self to become more aware and thoughtful of what he's going through. And I was actually catching up with him the other day. And he's doing a lot better, but there are just some aspects of his behavior that got to me because it just kind of brought it back for me.
How old is your cousin?
He's 9. And I'll tell you, it's interesting. I not only know his current case supervisor, who's a wonderful woman, but I found out about somebody who not only used to be his case supervisor when she was still working at the clinic where he's getting help, but when I reached out to her and she got back to me, the last thing I expected was for her to reveal to me that she worked with me then. And this completely came as a shock because when I came across her on Facebook, neither her name nor her picture rang a bell. And that's usually how I recall people who worked with me. So, amazing. 4.5 degrees of separation. Small world.
You also mentioned when you were a kid that, when you were first diagnosed that you had issues with routines were changed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that at all now as an adult?
Absolutely not. I'll always say this. At 22, I'm a lot more flexible than I was when I was 4 and a half.
Other people have other questions? How did you feel about ABA when, right at the time when it stopped? Were you sick of it at that point? Were you?
It was really me who made the decision to stop. I basically went to my mother and said, "Mom, that's it. I'm done. I'm at a point where I feel I'm capable of taking these things in my own hands." So I was pretty much relieved. And it was just something that I just kind of put to the side for a long time because I was just trying to move forward. But I think it was really after I graduated high school and went away to college. And just going to college for me was a fresh start, being the only person from my old high school there at the time, and that there was nobody there who already knew about my past. So I came there with nobody having any preconceptions or misjudgments of me. And that just made it really a lot easier for me to not only socialize, but eventually get to a point where I just started to look back on this differently. But it was like the first of baby steps to coming to terms with this, coming to peace with this was that documentary, but it really took just going away somewhere else and just being away from that all and just being removed from it and I just looked back at it differently. So one thing led to another, and I can tell you this, I may have not worked with Marla, but she knew of me, not only because she's good friends and former co-workers with several of my former therapists and case supervisors, but because of my mother as well. She's not only a lawyer, but she helps kids, families and kids suffering from autism and related disorders to get the services they need, and she's referred several to this office. So there's a good chance that some of you work or have worked with the kid with at least one of her current or former clients. That being said, because of that, it led to me first working at another clinic. Any of you here know of one called First Steps for Kids? The executive director, the clinical director, and one of the program directors are among people I used to work with. So that was, I actually came in there not knowing this. So going back to what I said earlier about running into one of those strict therapists fine unexpectedly, that happened there. But I'll tell you, it ended up being one of the best things that ever could have happened for me. And certainly last year working at C.A.R.D as well.
So 2 summers ago, you worked at First Steps,
Yes.
right? And we're doing admin work there?
Correct.
During your summer break?
Mm-hmm.
And then this past summer, it was at C.A.R.D?
Yes, and it was just, I don't know how to explain it, it was just an incredibly rewarding experience for me. And that seeing how these things work on the flip side of the coin just helped me so much in better understanding how I was then alongside how I am now. I mean, it was like rehab in that it just allowed me to work on myself a lot and come out of the whole and just seeing how much everybody loved what they did and hearing what they had to say, it made me feel a lot better about myself. And so from that, I just feel I've come out a lot more with expanded clarity and insight and a lot stronger and confident in myself. And I'm really grateful for that. I mean, I don't know how to explain. And I'll say this, anytime I saw any kids, they touched and moved me in such a way that it's hard for me to explain in words, other than to say that through them I saw so much of my old self. It's just anytime, it's just that's just how it is. And yeah, they make me really happy because I see how hard they're trying.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel comfortable talking about your past, like with your friends? Do you ever tell them?
I mean, while I'm at peace with the whole thing, it really depends on the circumstances of the situation. Especially being recovered from it, it's not really relevant now. It's not like having a certain skin color or being of a certain sexuality, because it's not permanent. So it's like, that's not the first thing I'm going to tell somebody who's outside of the field. For crying out loud. It's like, I mean, there are plenty of people who don't know that I had it, and they never will. And may never will at all. And that's totally fine, because, that's a part of my past, but it does not define who I am. I mean, I'm trying to move forward as best as I can, and I don't relish my accomplishments. But I could say that really just having reconciled with all, I now truly understand and value what it means to a lot of other people. So that's how it goes.
So for people that don't do what we do for a living, you don't necessarily, it's not something you necessarily talk about.
It's not necessary unless I maybe find it relevant to something brought up or discussed, or maybe if I hear somebody bashing, and I'm definitely gonna get in their face.